Okay, welcome to the deep dive. So today we're plunging into something I think is just incredibly relatable, right? That challenge of speaking a new language with confidence. And we've got a really fascinating source for this deep dive. It's excerpts from a podcast made just for English language learners. It's called Stop Caring, Speak English with Confidence.
Right. And what really jumps out from this source, it's not about, drilling grammar or memorizing word list. It's really a conversation about the human side of learning a language.
Yeah.
Specifically, like tackling that fear.
Yeah.
The one so many learners feel when it's actually time to speak.
Exactly. So our mission here really is to pull out the core message. Why is this fear so powerful for language learners? And maybe more importantly, what practical strategies, especially mindset ones, do these creators suggest for building that confidence? Let's see what we can unpack.
Yeah. And right away, they zero in on this question that sounds simple, but it's really complex for learners. Why do we care so much about what other people think? Especially when we feel vulnerable, like when speaking another language.
It really hits home, doesn't it? And the source connects it immediately to something, fundamental in all of us, human nature, that deep-seated desire to be accepted, to fit in, to be liked.
Mm-hmm. They even bring up this idea that we might be, and this is their phrase, wired to seek approval. So it's not just something we learn. Maybe there's a deeper drive behind it. Psychologically, maybe?
And this is where it gets really interesting and honestly a bit frustrating too. The source points out how this natural wiring, this seeking approval, it becomes a total trap in language learning. So instead of taking chances to practice, which is, let's face it, how you actually improve,
right?
You just clam up. You stay silent because you're afraid of messing up.
Yeah, they shared this anecdote, and it's so relatable. One of the hosts, when they first moved to the U.S., they said they actively avoided speaking just because they were terrified of sounding silly.
Yeah, I think anyone who's learned a language, they instantly get that feeling.
Oh, absolutely. I've definitely been there. That moment where, you have the phrase in your head, but the fear just locks it right in. But then the source offers this really powerful counter perspective. They have this line, and I think it's really worth repeating from the source. People will forget your mistakes, but you will remember your silence.
Wow. Okay. You will remember your silence.
Oh.
That's a tough one because it shifts the pain, doesn't it? From maybe a fleeting external judgment to this potentially really long-lasting internal regret. It kind of forces you to reframe mistakes. They're not failures. They're signs of growth, signs of effort. But the silence, that's a sign of missed growth. It totally flips the script on what feels important in that moment. It stops being about avoiding like a tiny bit of embarrassment from a mistake and starts being about avoiding that huge missed opportunity that comes with staying quiet.
So, okay, how does this fear, this sort of approval-seeking trap, how does it actually show up day to day for learners? The source uses that perfect universal example, ordering food. In a restaurant.
Slightly amused too. Oh, yes.
Rather.
The restaurant scenario, we've all been there. They talk about how you practice your order in your head, maybe even whisper it, getting it just right. And then the waiter asks something slightly different, something not in your script. And boom, complete brain freeze.
Yeah, it's that feeling of the rug just being pulled right out from under you. Because the conversation didn't go exactly how you planned it. But the source makes a really, really key point here. Something that can help take that pressure off. They remind us, native speakers, they interact with people from all over, all day long. They're incredibly used to different accents, different ways of speaking English.
Right. And often they actually admire people making the effort to speak another language. So if the person you're talking to probably isn't judging you harshly, where's all that pressure coming from in the restaurant?
Exactly. The source basically concludes that the huge pressure learners feel, it's almost entirely internal. It's the pressure you put on yourself, amplified by that deep fear of, not getting approval, of sounding silly.
Okay, so if it's internal, how do you even start to dismantle that internal barrier? The source gives a great practical example. They use a role play scenario. It's a university student, clearly nervous, trying to ask a professor a question about homework.
And what's great about how they break down this role play is the focus isn't on catching every tiny grammar mistake the student makes. The main takeaway is that even though they were nervous, even though maybe they didn't use the perfect word every single time, the communication worked. It was successful.
Yes. Exactly. The student got the answer they needed, so the key wasn't perfect, flawless English, it was just effective communication. And, maybe just as important, the courage to simply ask for help in the first place. That's a huge part of confidence, right? Realizing you don't have to be perfect to get things done.
Hmm. And they even pull out some specific phrases from that exchange, phrases that are really useful tools for navigating real conversations, especially when you're feeling a bit unsure. They help you make sure that connection actually happens.
Like, instead of just freezing up when you don't get something, using a phrase like, "it doesn't make sense to me." I mean, it's polite, it's clear, it just means, "I don't understand," but without feeling like, you failed somehow.
Or, if you need instructions clarified, moving beyond just "what do I do?" to something more collaborative, like "should we include?" That sounds more engaged. Or that great one, "can you share an example?" Perfect for when you need something concrete.
And these aren't just for school, are they? Which the source points out. These are phrases you can use right away in real-world situations. Meetings, emails, just chatting. Using them helps you sound more natural, I think, more engaged, and actually more confident because you're actively managing the conversation.
And this all ties straight into what the source really emphasizes as the kind of the true game changer: your mindset. They share some specific mindset shifts that really helped one of the speakers when they were learning Spanish.
Okay, these sound useful, really useful. First one, done is better than perfect. That right there just gives you permission to let go of needing to be flawless, doesn't it?
Absolutely. Huge pressure release. And then the next one, nobody's judging you as hard as you're judging yourself, which just reinforces that idea we talked about, the pressure being mostly internal.
And I really like this third one. It feels so freeing. You don't need perfect English to have a perfect message.
Yes. That one hits directly at that common fear, right? That if your English isn't perfect, people will think you're not smart or capable somehow. The source kind of flips that. It suggests that often what people actually notice and admire is your courage. Just the active trying of putting yourself out there even though you might make mistakes.
So what this all seems to boil down to, the main idea running through this source, is that the whole point of language, of communication, it isn't about showing off how perfect your grammar is. It's about connection, not perfection.
That's such a powerful way to look at it, a real lens shift. It moves your focus away from the potential flaws in how you say something and onto the actual goal. Making a connection with someone else.
Yeah.
Understanding them, being understood.
They even get into a really common question from listeners in the source material, which is, how do I stop comparing my English to other people? The ones who seem way ahead of me.
Oh yeah, comparison. That's another huge confidence killer for language learners. So the source gives two, I think, really solid pieces of advice here. First, just recognize the simple truth. Everyone's learning journey is totally unique. You see someone speaking really fluently, but you have no idea how long they've been at it, what resources they had access to, their background. It's apples and oranges.
Right. Their path isn't your path. It can't be. And the second piece of advice, it's really actionable. And it lines up perfectly with everything else they've been saying. Shift your comparison inward. Stop looking side to side. Measure yourself against your past self.
Exactly. Are you better now than you were last year? Or last month, even last week? Focusing on that internal growth, no matter how small it feels sometimes, that gives you real, actual evidence that your effort is paying off, that you're improving.
And that leads them right to that concluding thought on comparison, which echoes the whole theme again. Progress, not perfection.
Yeah, it's like the thread connecting all their advice, isn't it? From dealing with fear, to using helpful phrases, to changing your mindset. The goal isn't some flawless performance. It's just consistent, maybe brave effort that leads to actual progress over time.
So if we pull all these threads together from the source, recognizing that internal fear trap, reframing mistakes as growth, focusing on your own progress, shifting the goal from perfection to connection, the overarching message seems incredibly clear. Real confidence in speaking a language. It isn't some magic level you hit when you suddenly stop making mistakes.
No, not at all. It's something you build. It's cultivated through just trying. Through the simple and, often brave act of engaging with people, prioritizing that human connection over worrying about your own perceived flaws. It's about accepting that learning is messy, and just doing it anyway.
And by actively working to get over that fear of judgment, which, as the source argues pretty convincingly, is mostly internal anyway, you actually create the space for your real voice, your actual message to come out and be heard.
Yeah, it's the difference between constantly trying to protect yourself from maybe getting criticized and actually daring to express yourself, fully.
Absolutely. So let's maybe leave you, the listener, with this thought to chew on. We've focused this deep dive on learning a language, obviously, but how might applying these core ideas progress, not perfection, focusing on connection, not perfection, shifting comparison inward? How might those resonate beyond just speaking a second language? Where else in your life maybe is that fear of judgment or that hunt for perfection holding you back? And what could happen if you started applying some of these ideas there too?